this isn't the right meeting to do it at, but my question was about River Road. At one point, in I think it was 2002, it was going to be a 4-lane road, and I believe that no longer is the fact that it's a 2-lane road. I tried for the last couple of days to find out if the DOT or anybody has plans on working on that road. Do you have any information on that, Jim?
So Dawn, I would ask that you're not specifically talking about any item on our agenda. So I'd ask you to appear on item number 4. And
okay,
I think you might be addressing a comment that I made multiple meetings ago, where in my past job, I was witness to a River Road plan back in 2002 that showed an improvement that was, I think, 4 lanes wide. So 2 lanes in each direction. That hasn't happened, but there is plans for improvements, and Mark actually, or somebody in the village, has plans in front of the commission members right now. But I share that information, but I wish if you could please address the commission under this item number 4 and maybe share your concerns and what you want to speak about tonight.
Oh, thank you, Jim. May I ask another question? Is there any way to make improvements or do something about the empty car wash building? I'm not sure if that's under your peruse or whatever, but it looks terrible with the concrete blocks in it and weeds and everything. I'm not sure if this is planning and zoning, and I apologize, Brandy and Jim, if I'm saying the wrong things. Any thoughts on that? Oh, Brandy?
Yeah, Brandy wishes to speak now.
Dawn, there's probably something that's not under the planning and zoning purview for the meeting.
Okay.
But it's definitely something that I could talk to you about on the side if you want to give me a call tomorrow.
What meeting would I bring something like that up at? The village board meeting?
Well, I guess it would depend on what your concerns are with the building and how deep we dive into it. Typically, property maintenance and things like that are handled under the zoning ordinance, which is not something that's typically handled at planning and zoning or the village board when it comes to property complaints, unless it gets beyond the point of no return.
Okay, so I can call you tomorrow then, Brandy, and I appreciate you taking the time to explain that, and I sincerely apologize.
No, that's not a problem.
The mistakes. Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. So is there anybody wishing to appear before the commission under a non-agenda item? This now would be your opportunity to speak. I believe the 3 other registrants are all on specific items. I give everybody the opportunity. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to item 5, which is 5.1, presentation and discussion on a concept plan for a proposed multifamily residential building in the northern portion of a parcel listed on the agenda, which is in Bear Tree Farms West Development, west of Peterson Crossing and south of Windsor Road in the village of DeForest. So I look at staff. Did you want to frame anything before the developer? Or?
Yeah, thank you, Jim, and I will be brief. We do have Matt from MWF Development on Zoom, and he will be going through a presentation of their concept plan. This is a proposal in concept now to develop 6 acres immediately south of the Yahar River Learning Center on Peterson Crossing. The commission will remember that last month or within the last couple of months at least, we reviewed a concept plan for the entirety of the lands between the Learning Center and the retirement community north of Reardon Road. This is one component of that. Before submitting applications for rezoning and certified survey map, and then site plan review. The applicant wanted to present a concept. We've reviewed the concept at staff, have a few minor comments that are really considerations moving forward, but this is an opportunity for you to learn about the proposal and offer any of your comments before they move forward with more detailed plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So is there a development team that wishes to make the presentation?
Yeah, so Matt Yetza is on via Zoom. Make sure he's still out here.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Matt, could
Excellent.
you state your name, like company and address for the record, please?
Yes, absolutely. So it's Matt Yetzer. Company name is MWF Properties and address is 7645 Lindale Avenue South, Minneapolis.
Thank you.
So do you want me to dive right into it, Brandy?
Yeah, sorry, I was just writing down your address. All right, can you see the screen okay?
I can see it if you guys got it on your end. Yep.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and you just guide me when you want me to change.
Will do. Thank you, Brandy. So, Commission, thank you for the opportunity to present for your feedback today. Like I mentioned, my name is Matt Yetzer. I'm with MWF Properties. We are a multifamily housing developer based in the Minneapolis Twin Cities area, specializing in workforce housing, which is 60% AMI or less housing. And we also have a few market rate projects we're working on, but our bread and butter is this workforce housing, similar to what we're proposing here with this project. So Brandy, if you want to go to the next slide, I have a little bit of company history. So since inception in 2000, we've developed a little over 2,200 affordable or workforce housing units across the Midwest. We have a large portion of our portfolio is in Minnesota, up in the Twin Cities area, and down in Rochester, Minnesota, and the suburban areas surrounding there. We're long-term owners and operators. Since 2000, we've sold one or two properties. None of them within the state or within the Twin Cities, but just kind of more outlying property. So our vision or our goal here is to be, long-term owners. And as part of that, like the previous slide mentions, we have a in-house property management company who is a related entity company that we are in kind of constant communication with on our portfolio, and we'll handle the management services for the life of the project. The next few slides here, the one that Brandy is on, and then the next few are just to give you an idea of a few of our more recent projects within our portfolio. Most of these developments are 3 to 4 stories and 60 to 100 units, kind of similar to what we're proposing here. A lot of times the materials and that are driven by feedback from commissions like yourself or city staff members or neighborhoods. So that's something we're hoping for some feedback from you on here tonight as well. But just to give you an idea of kind of what the typical product looks like and what a project in this location here in Bear Tree Farms might look like as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, Brandy, I have some project features. These are just some of the amenity spaces that we include in these properties. I'll highlight a few of them here. So fitness center, community room, kind of standard things, hanging bike racks, underground parking. We're planning on following the ordinance, for one underground parking spot per unit, and that would be included in the rental rate here. In-unit laundry, and then an outdoor patio and some green features. The solar-ready roof, which we've been doing on a case-by-case basis here over the last few years, and then our website is below there too for some additional info on us. The next slide, Brandy goes into a little bit more about this specific site. So like I mentioned at the open, the proposed project is a workforce housing project with rents targeting households earning 60% of the area median income or less, which I know, as Mark described in the staff report, that's about $60,000 in Dane County. 3 stories of residential over 1 level of underground parking. We have a pitched roof concept, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. So it's 100 units total. We're proposing 61 bedrooms, 22s, and 23 bedrooms is our preliminary unit mix. And then as far as parking, like I mentioned, we will meet the 1-to-1 covered parking requirement, and then also the 2-to-1 requirement for overall parking stalls for general occupancy buildings. So lastly, based on some feedback we received from Mark and city staff, we moved the building closer to Peterson Crossing, allowing for a little bit more of a buffer there between the highway and the off ramp. So that was those were a few of the changes that we made in response to comments from Mark, but looking forward to hearing your guys' thoughts as well here tonight. And then the next slide is just a kind of closer up view of the preliminary site plan. You can see the 3 stories, 100 units, the storm retention ponding on the what would be the west side of the site, and backing up to the daycare there to the north. So that's kind of all I had. Pretty brief presentation, but looking forward to your feedback here and appreciate your consideration, and happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
Thank you, Matt. I'd open up for any commission comments, questions. Gina, it looks like you might have something. No? Go ahead.
Mark, I just want to clarify in your report that this would be a comp plan amendment because it's mixed use. The site is currently mixed use, correct?
Yes, Scott, that's accurate. The comprehensive plan land use configuration was developed about 10 years ago with Bear Tree Farms West, in association with the Bear Tree Farms West concept plan that was current then. The proposed uses have shifted around a little bit. The general concept is the same. However, this particular piece of real estate was identified or is identified in the comprehensive plan for mixed use development, which suggests that there'd either be a single building with, for example, commercial ground floor, retail or residential upstairs, or some sort of commercial component in a development. So in order for this particular site and this location to go forward, in conjunction with the rezoning request, I'm suggesting that the comprehensive plan be amended to better correspond with this single-use building as opposed to the mixed-use recommendation in the current plan.
Thanks, Mark. And then that would mean, are you advising that we look at other areas then to maintain or increase the ability for commercial space?
Not necessarily. I think, there are some commercial sites already zoned to the immediate north that would continue to be zoned commercial. The interchange area, not necessarily in DeForest, but in Windsor, has other opportunities for commercial development on the west side of the road. And as we head a mile or two to the south at 51 and 19, there's an abundance of commercial space. So in my opinion, we probably have enough commercial space in the area to sacrifice a vision for commercial a little bit deeper or further south in Bear Tree Farms as the 2011 concept suggested.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Mark, to add to your response we are still talking about a little bit of commercial at Peterson Crossing, and I forget the boundary road or whatever it is.
That's correct. To the immediate east of this site, east-southeast, there would be a commercial site located at where the arrow is currently pointing. So, yeah, there would still be, depending on how things shake out, 2 or 3 smaller commercial sites within Bear Tree Farms West to fill.
Thank you. Tom?
All right, a couple of questions. The once you get moving on this, what is the timing versus the construction of the baseball field and the other proposed houses, single-family houses in that area?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's I don't have a really solid answer for you. It's kind of all in flux depending on how things come together and how quickly we can get through our land use approval processes, and then work with the financing will be through WIDA. So working through their process, I can speak for our project specifically, we would like to, in an ideal world, be under construction in the spring of 2022. So how that ends up aligning with the baseball park and other development in this area, I unfortunately don't have a great understanding of that timeline and what the master plan is for timing on those things.
Does staff have any idea on that? Because I don't want this apartment building being built and then no place for anybody to do anything for an extended period of time.
The village board members might be in a better position to talk about this than me even, but I know that the developer and board have been in discussions about moving the park proposal forward, and I believe a development agreement is being prepared to allow that to charge forward. So I would not be surprised if the rezoning proposal for the site that Matt is talking about today came alongside a rezoning proposal for the whole west side of Bear Tree Farms West, and it was just one proposal as opposed to, segmenting out this 100-unit building.
Okay. Next question. I don't remember seeing anything on the density of this apartment. I'm assuming it falls within the requirements?
It does. The zoning ordinance requires 2,500 square feet per housing unit. And for 100 units, if you do the math, that requires about 5.8 acres. The site is 6 acres.
Okay. And then another thing, I just have a question for Matt. You said that you want to try and maintain possession and still own these units. Under what circumstances would you guys think about selling it? And what guarantees does the village and the residents of the community have that this isn't going to turn into a boondoggle down the road where somebody buys it and,
Sure. No, it's a fair question. So we have, as part of our financing, we're required to hold or maintain ownership for a period of time. So that the 15-year requirement as part of the financing is something that we agree to maintain or agree to meet. We actually extend that time period, extend the affordability, and we extend that for 30 years as part of this 4% federal tax credit program we're pursuing. So at least 30 years is when we're going to be in the deal. The circumstances by which it would, I guess we would end up selling after that period of time, it would, it would be tough to envision, especially in an area like this where we're working on developing a larger presence in the Dane County area. A lot of the two properties I can think of offhand that we've sold were kind of a remote area in Iowa where we didn't have any other management properties under management over there, or kind of where we had a disagreement with a investor and we needed to move on from the property just to help clean that up. Other than that, when it's an area we're focused on future development and we want to build a presence, and in order to do that, want to be a responsible neighbor in the upkeep of these properties. I find it hard to envision that would be the case here, given that, but things change, and those are just an example of some two situations I can think of in the past where we did end up going that route. Again, it's we have 25 properties in the portfolio currently, and there was two of them that occurred. So it's not likely, and it's not something we like to do, but it does happen on a few of them.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? I see none. I don't see Mike on screen. Mike, if you have anything, please let us know.
I'm good, Jim.
Thank you. So I'd like to bring up one question. I guess looking at some of your schematics, you show some different amenities, and one of them, say, being like a pool house or a clubhouse, and I don't see that on this site. And I'm not saying that it needs to be there, but what I'm asking is what sort of amenities you see that you might be adding that might be, say, over and above what you typically do or have already shown.
Sure. Yeah, we don't generally do pool rooms. We don't have any of those within our portfolio, but you know, a lot of times it's a larger community room with a kitchenette space for you know, residents to gather with family or friends. It's a fitness center with you know, 5 or 6 pieces of equipment. In locations like this, where there's the potential for connectivity to walking paths and bike paths, we'll definitely look into things like hanging bike racks, bike fix-it stations, work into the design to make it easily accessible to those pathways and those bike storage rooms and things like that. And then the outdoor patio space is something, you know, that I think is pretty unique for this project, and we're based on what we've done in the past, and that's just due to kind of wanting to emphasize the community nature that this master developed area will have with the ballpark, with the trails that I mentioned, and just trying to kind of encourage some of that you know, connectivity and neighborhood feel. Even though it will be a higher density project within the development, I think increasing some of that connectivity and working with our design team to make sure those things are emphasized will be important to help it, you know, fit into the neighborhood and you know, be an asset that fits in with the rest of the development over there.
Yep. Thank you, Matt. And I will mention, I did catch on your comments with the bicycle racks and the different amenities with that. And right now we have a conceptual site in our planning and zoning packet. Yep, Mark's got it on screen now, or Brandy. And this is probably like the 3rd one, maybe 4th one I've seen. And in a previous version, and I'm assuming it might still be there, is that there was a natural path was proposed, sort of wandering around the stormwater basins and things like that. But I think that could be a really huge amenity when you connect it with the bicycle traffic that you're mentioning too. So I invite you to work with the developer and maybe incorporate some of that connectability with that natural path through your site too. Thank you. I think that's the only comment I had. So I thank you. I'll give one more opportunity.
I'll just make a quick comment, Jim. I mean, our report shows the need for affordable housing units, and this would certainly fit the bill. So, I for one am encouraged by this project. So,
thank you, Scott. And I agree that I think this is a good location. There's a lot of amenities in the area, and it's very accessible to, say, the greater Dane County too, for job markets and everything. So I thank you, Matt, for the proposal, and hope it continues to move forward. Do you have any other questions for us?
Nothing at this time, no. Looking forward to continuing to move forward and get your guys' feedback as we move through the process with some more detail.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we are on item 6.1. It's a public, I'll read it into the record. It's a public hearing on a petition for rezoning of a parcel number and another parcel number, both written in the agenda, totaling 47.2 acres west of River Road and south of Norway Grove Memorial Church from the A1 Agricultural District to the RN2A Residential Neighborhood, Single Family Residence, the RM3 Residential Mix, 2-Family Housing, the RM4 Residential Mix, Multifamily Housing, and C1 Conservancy Zoning District to facilitate a mixed residential subdivision named Yahara Grove. So I'll open up, I'll open up the public hearing at 6:29. And I will note, and I'm looking at the commissioners, I've got a request by a few citizens and discussed with staff today as far as how to go through this item. And the request was, and I think a good proposal is to have staff open it up, have the developer present, so that way the public comment can address their concerns rather than addressing concerns that may have already been addressed by the development. And if you're all in agreement, that's how I'd like to move forward with this public hearing. I'm seeing a lot of nods. So that
Agreed.
might be a more proper thing, but I can go by unanimous consent too. Okay. So Mark, would you?
Unanimous consent work, Randy?
Yeah. Mark, would you open it up?
Sure, thank you, Jim. I'll start as the village planner to kind of frame the proposal, but try to be brief. This is a request that I would call the kind of critical entitlement stage for this project, where the applicant is requesting rezoning of the land to facilitate the development and a preliminary plat to subdivide the land into several small pieces, lots for sale and for development. My recommendation tonight is that the Planning and Zoning Commission conduct the public hearing, hear public comment, offer your comments and suggestions, and then postpone action this evening. I've got a few reasons for that. One is that so we can hear public comment and have a chance to absorb it, and any potential changes can be reflected over the course of the next month. The other two have to do with the kind of guarantees that I could offer you as the village planner as to follow through on the proposal that you see tonight. You have, as part of the proposal, as suggested, a mixed residential development. As proposed, it would have 174 market rate apartment units. It would have 73 single-family lots. It would have 30 condominium duplex units, as well as 12 acres of common open space, including a neighborhood park. The applicant will share a lot more with that. Where we're at right now on the multiple family proposals, I think some greater assurances that we're going to get 174 units and not any more, because I think that was the intent here. And that what you'll see is what you get in terms of the design characteristics or quality. We have, with the RM4 residential zoning, some basic controls over quality and basic controls over density, but to give you that assurance that you'll get what you see, I'm suggesting we give it a little bit more time. The applicant may be proposing some deed restrictions over that piece of land that would do that for you. The second component that I feel, based on past conversations is very important, is to provide reasonable assurance that as the multiple family component of this project develops, we see single family development happening. So I've suggested that the applicant supply a phasing plan that would show first phase of single family happening at the same time as the first phase of multifamily, and that there be a general plan that will see these lots develop and homes built on them within the single-family portions. The proposed developer, Little Creek, has a strong track record in Dane County. You can visit several of their projects, but they're multiple family projects. And so this, in my experience at least, is their first big foray into developing a single family subdivision. So I do want to give you the comfort that you're going to get a high quality single family subdivision as well as high quality multiple family development. And like I said, there's a few things that I'd like to see to be able to give you that assurance. There are some other minor points and major points to work through. The final major point from a policy perspective is the mix of housing units that's being proposed within this development. Now we can talk as we get to the commission discussion level as to how to kind of slice this development relative to lands to its north and south and west of Chapel Green and so forth. But the proposal on its face doesn't meet the normal minimum requirement for single-family housing. The comprehensive plan suggests that each new neighborhood have at least 75% of its units be single-family housing. Again, regardless of how you slice it, this proposal's under that total. The comprehensive plan does say, but the village board can approve a lower percentage than 75 under certain circumstances and criteria that are listed in the comprehensive plan. They have to do with development that maybe provides exceptional amenities that go beyond what we would normally expect within developments. They involve the potential for providing significant owner occupancy within the two-family or multiple family components, so that we have a good balance of renter occupancy and owner occupancy within each neighborhood. And they have to do with providing or significantly advancing village goals. They might be economic development goals, resource preservation, recreation. But again, a development that sort of serves as a shiny penny for the community is the basic gist of the exceptions to the 75% guideline. So as a plan commission, you can advise on that, but it's ultimately the village board's decision as to whether to say, yep, we're okay with this development because it meets one or more of the criteria for adjusting that standard. The proposal relates to the comprehensive plan in different ways: transportation, parks, and open space. It generally hits those marks quite well. The proposal has been adjusted since you saw it last as a concept plan about a year ago, I think almost exactly a year ago. Today, we can get into the details as to how it does that. We have, in addition to the development team represented both in person and on the Zoom, we have on the Zoom KL Engineering, representatives from KL Engineering. The village has hired KL Engineering to study the traffic impacts associated with this development. They've completed a detailed traffic impact analysis. You have a summary of it in my report. You'll get the full report very shortly, and you'll hear, ideally after the developer presents tonight, from KL to talk a little bit about the traffic impacts and what they suggest associated with them, because I know that is, among the more significant concerns that many people have voiced associated with this project. But with that, I think I'll close my opening comments. You perhaps worked your way through my 10.5-page report. There's a lot more in there and a lot more to talk about. But at this point, I'll turn it over to the development team to talk a little bit more and to present their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for that introduction and overview. Mike Filkowski, the owner of Little Creek Construction. I'm the one that is, my team has proposed this development on excuse me, on,
Mike, this is Jim. If I could interrupt, please, could you just state your name and address? And I'd ask your team to do the same before you start your presentation.
Sure. It's Mike Filkowski, 852 Clarkson Road, Marshall, Wisconsin, the owner of Little Creek Construction, who's presenting this Yahara Grove subdivision to the village.
Thank you. And there's two people here in front of us too, if you could state your names also.
Ben Fulkowski, 852 Clarkson Road, on the Little Creek Construction Development Team. We encourage you to show those mics close to your face.
And I'm Jim Bricker, planner with JSD Professional Services, located in Verona.
Thank you. And sorry for the interruption, Mike. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to give a short overview. Jim has the nuts and bolts of what we're doing here. We're looking to put in a upscale apartment complex with high-end amenities, with a park to serve not only this neighborhood but the neighboring neighborhoods and the multifamily and the condos that we're putting in this property. Our plan is to have it's going to be phased over 3 different phases with about 20 single-family lots in that first phase. And I don't know if you take note, the lots right there that Brandy or whoever is highlighting right there. The larger lots are out on River Road. We don't feel like not all people living in DeForest want large, huge lots. So we try to make a mix of both here. Keep the larger lots out on the front of River Road where the Woods Glen residents have larger lots also. And then as we move back towards the interstate, have more 7,000, 8,000 square foot lots. The amenities on the multifamily that we're proposing is underground parking, 1-to-1. There's going to be a putting green for the residents to use, a swimming pool, a clubhouse with fitness center, and gazebo with a grilling area and a fire pit, and there's just a lot of outdoor amenities to create a neighborhood and get these residents to be a group. These are not. There's been rumors circulating around that we're wanting to put in affordable housing here. That is not the case at all. We want higher end housing here, and we are not asking for any TIF money or any. This is all going to be self-funded. So we just wanted everyone to know that we're a family-owned business from the area, and we are not going anywhere. And we will not be selling this or not be turning this over other than to our children and our children's children running in at some point. So that's about all I had. Jim, if you want to chime in now.
Sure, thank you, Mike. Yeah, what I wanted to do is to give you a brief overview. I'm hopeful that you skimmed through the packet of information. And we talked about a lot of different items and elements that were part of this planning process. but I'll just touch on a few of the highlights of it.
Sorry, Jim. Everyone needs a little coaching sometimes. There you go.
Really? Seriously? You couldn't hear me? You want me to? Oh, jeez. All right. It's probably the mask. That's probably what's doing it. Okay. Anyway, as Mark was saying, we've been working on this project actually for a little bit more than 18 months, and we first introduced the concept to the neighborhood in the planning staff and planning commission last fall. And it has evolved a little bit since those earlier times. And I remember being out there in the neighborhood meeting. It was a night a lot like this. It was about 90 degrees and 90% humidity. So this is kind of a little bit of an ironic happening at the same time. The more things change, the more they stay the same. At any rate, kind of the highlights. As has been noted, this is a mixed residential proposal for a residential neighborhood that has a variety of housing opportunities in it. 73 single family, 30 twin home condominium units, and 174 apartments. The idea is to be able to provide opportunity for a wide range of residents seeking the housing opportunities. Mark touched on it a little bit. There is a substantial amount of open space in the site. You have a neighborhood park that is designed to accommodate playground, a youth soccer field, open playfield area, a sledding hill, which is what we're using to accommodate the grade transition that is out here, and I'll explain that in a little bit. And then the stormwater management area, and then down in the corner, you have about 200 plus feet of Yahara River frontage. And I'll touch on how all these fit into the village's planning visions for that area. Mike touched on a few items for the amenities within the park site, within the apartment complex. We'll touch on those later with representatives from JLA who are also on as the architectural component of our team. I also might add that the initial planning as shown in that site plan that Brandy just had up there also includes a paved multi-use path that goes down what we have artfully named Street A, which extends west from River Road over to Street B, which goes north and south. That paved network connects to the existing Yahara River Trail system, which is just off to the east on the other side of River Road, and provides an opportunity for connecting onto that trail system, plus eventually to travel north and south, depending on how development occurs in this neighborhood and a greater, kind of from a macro perspective. Just to touch on a few of the highlights and planning considerations, give you a kind of a contextual framework of how we got here. There are several elements from the site and from city policy and regulation that kind of led us to this conclusion for this arrangement of land use. First of all is the terrain and drainage. The site is on the southeasterly aspect of a kind of a eroded moraine drumlin. It drains directly to the Yahara River down in the southeast corner. That grade, we've tried to maintain as much of that respect for the geography as we can. You do have to make some mass grading adjustments to try to get in a functional stormwater pond, the infiltration areas, and developable areas for the various land uses. Two, we were given the task of creating a neighborhood here that respected existing right-of-ways and the plans for improvements to River Road. We will be providing additional right-of-way for that expansion plan as is currently under design, I'll say. And then also to maintain Daly Road in its current configuration and as to function and right-of-way. So we won't be touching that right-of-way at all with any improvements made by this project. Three, there are also a couple of policy elements that we had to build into the consideration. One is the noise abatement requirements for the land uses that are along the interstate highway. And then secondly, what I'll call a reforestation or recreating a woodland feel to that, because we have to take down quite a few trees, or I'll say quite a few, all the existing trees that are on the site, because they occur right where the stormwater management area is. And a little bit of an element on how we're going to do that. First, the noise abatement berm. We built our initial design information off of data originally collected from a previous project that was considered out here back in, I'm going to say 2007, 2009. And we supplemented that with newer sound collection data. And we've created, that led us to the conclusion, I'll say, that we could accommodate that noise abatement requirement with a vegetative berm along the interstate. The berm is entirely within the project area. It's not in the interstate right of way at all. And right now, it looks like that berm is extends to a height of maybe 9 to 10 feet above the elevation of the northbound lane on the interstate. So if you need to get a perspective of it, it's going to completely screen the area from interstate travel. So as people are traveling on the interstate, they're just going to see a kind of a wooded hillside visually. We are also building into this noise abatement consideration and from an architectural standpoint for those proposed condominium twin home units. Mainly because that structure also contributes to creating the acoustic shadow on the east side of those buildings. We're trying to avoid having to put in kind of noise barrier wall in combination with that berm structure. So we're going to use those buildings, and we'll design the buildings such that they perform that function. There'll be, limited window exposure on the west side and sort of thing like that. They serve to deflect and diffract any kind of noise coming off the highway. That being said, until we complete the details levels of that study, I won't be able to guarantee there won't be a wall, because we have to accommodate stormwater drainage that comes off the interstate. And that is right in the southwest corner, right at the corner of the property is a drainage way that comes from the interstate travel. And then in the far northwest corner, because of the terrain of the site, it's fairly flat and open and exposed to lands to the northwest. So that area will probably be augmented with some additional densely planted vegetation to perform that noise attenuation function. The other consideration that happened when we did this study and why we came to utilizing condominium as the land use along here is it gave us the organizational entity to maintain that berm. You have a condominium association, it's a landscape, it's maintained by a common entity, and that's, I think, critical to maintaining how that berm operates and functions and appears. So that's what drove that kind of arrangement of land uses along that side. I will say that there's also a supplemental berm that's on the east side of Street B. It's not as big. It's a much smaller berm, more street level. But that provides additional noise attenuation for the backyards of those, 5 or 6 single-family residences through there. That's led to that part of the design process. The second point, as far as the regulatory expectations, we're replacing the trees that have to be taken down on and I'll get the number wrong, I think it's a 2-for-1 ratio. So the idea here is to intensively landscape the area between the stormwater pond and the Daly Road right-of-way, as well as the kind of the western bank that comes down into the infiltration basin. We'd be aiming to do that with a variety of southern Wisconsin woodland species to kind of create that canopy. And in fact, that's what kind of led to the name, the Yahara Grove. So it works out pretty well. The stormwater pond itself is designed with a footpath connection through it. Well, not through it, it's along the berm. But that loops back and connects back up to where the park is. It also connects to the Yahara River Trail System. In the big scheme of things, on the village's comprehensive plan and the park plan, this is a location for a trailhead facility for a canoe launch, feature for a water trail. So we're dedicating that far corner as a woodland wetland conservancy. There's space to get down to the water's edge, depending on how the design works from the village's standpoint. But it also connects and engages that riverfront into the middle of the property. There's a clear visual connection. So you end up with frontage along River Road that is roughly half, 50% of it is restored, re-wooded, reforested open space to create kind of that character of that environmental corridor for the Yahara River Valley. The last items that, I wanted to touch a little bit on the street layout system itself, and then KL will provide you a little bit more information about the intersection designs and things like that. Excuse me, I gotta take a breath here. So, as we began to look at how the street system and the infrastructure system would work, the key street into the project is Street A. Takes place at the intersection that's the main intersection for the site. That would be designed to accommodate pedestrian travel, pedestrian crossing, especially with the connection to the bike path, the multi-use path that extends through the property. And then we designed and reconfigured the blocks such that there would always be 2 points of entry, public street entry into the project. So, and this carries forth through all the phases. And you can, I think, Brandy, if you have that phasing plan handy, that will kind of give you a comfort level on how that works. Okay. And then the last part of the street network system is to pick up and to help or to convey the implementation of this comprehensive plan street network system, which is intended to provide for future north and southbound travel at some point undetermined at this time. But that's why Street B is where it's at and extends to the property edges on either end. So here's the general phasing plan as it is laid out right now. Phase one is, as Mike was saying, like one apartment building, 20 plus 21 single family lots, and the park site, which would be developed and improved, and conveyance of creating that open space, that re-wooded area, and the stormwater management system. As the project moves west, you have street extensions into phase two. My guess is that there may be a sub-phase in there, just depending on how market trends go, and maybe we do street C first and then street D or vice versa. And then finishing up with phase three. Advantage of doing that in that order also is that the initial mass grading will begin to create that noise attenuation berm, and we can begin to establish vegetative cover and trees on that prior to when the condominium units get built. So that in a nutshell is how everything has come together. Now I will let our architectural members of our team talk about some of the amenities for the apartment site itself, and then we can talk about any other issues as far as traffic and other questions that may come up in discussion.
Ryan, are you online?
I am online, Andrew.
Okay. All right. Cool.
You want to kick it off, or you want me to?
No, why don't you go ahead?
Andrew, you might be a little bit more
This is the
familiar.
planning and zoning chair, Jim, again. Could you please state your name and address
Sure.
and stuff for the record?
Absolutely. Name is Brian Wolf, Senior Design Architect with JLA, Joseph Lee Architects, 800 West Broadway, Suite 200, Monona, Wisconsin.
I'm Andy Chitwood with a project manager with JLA Architects, also at 800 West Broadway, Suite 200 in Monona.
Thanks, Brandy. This is a good place to start here. So the design, there's a couple of elements here. I think it's beneficial to touch upon, is that being from, born in Wisconsin, lived in Wisconsin most of my life. The design with this particular building uses stone, elements of wood, very little elements of metal for the coping. And the stone is really reflective of the qualities of the typologies that are in and around this area in northern Wisconsin, middle of Wisconsin, and that's of agrarian life. So you see the stone that is reflective in the foundations of barns. You see the stone that is, evident in older churches and religious life around the state, and also older types of lodges and typologies like that. And obviously wood, you couldn't have barns and agrarian structures without wood. So that is expressive of the old timbers and trusses that you would see in those types of buildings and lodges throughout Wisconsin. So using that in a more modern, maybe sophisticated manner to start the design intent off in the development. Here you just see how we are starting to use the trusses and the gables of the building. Now, the gables are, obviously very prominent in the area, especially to the east of River Road. So we wanted to keep that nature of the residential value of that typology, and also, reflective of paying homage to, what was here before, and that was kind of the agrarian lifestyle and typology of those structures. You can probably go to the next slide, Brandy. Thank you. Here's just a little closer element. As we get into the entry, you can see we start to layer in wood trellis over the entry that could have, vegetated vines or flowering plants that grow up the terrace. We have a security fence that you can see through, so you can see the activity in and out. And then just moments like at the end of the building, moments where we have just a wall that kind of flares out and disguises one balcony and reveals another. Next slide. Here's more of an elevation. You can start to see the patios a little bit more, where we start to layer in the wood columns into the balconies. You can start to see the wood soffitting within the gables and the tops of the building. And then, of course, the stone base that kind of acts as the foundation, the strength of the building itself. And then we're using typical lap siding that you would see in residential areas, both the larger format and smaller format. Smaller format being inset, where the balconies are, and then the larger format defining the units, the living areas within each unit. And I think that was the last image. Andrew, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Just that, we're working with Jim and Mike on, as these designs evolve, especially on the interior, to stay within the the density requirements and working with making sure we're meeting the minimums of the unit sizes that the zoning code outlines. I know there's a couple that need to be reworked a little bit, so we're continuing to work on that as this evolves. And amenity-wise, I believe, as Mike mentioned earlier, the clubhouse is a pretty good-sized clubhouse with, I believe, intended to have, the community room, on-site leasing office, and a fitness center, that sort of thing, as you can see with the pool. And as Mike mentioned earlier, the putting green and grilling areas and that sort of thing. So I think those amenities, locations of them continue to evolve as the project moves forward. So, Jim, is there anything else you'd like us to touch on?
I don't think so. I think that gives you a general overview of what the project, at least that component of the project, will look like. If you need a kind of a flavor, I think in the noise abatement report, we began to think through how those buildings would work. And there is a real simple hand sketch in there if that becomes of interest to anybody. The single family portion, the lots, will be developed and sold, in mass to builders. And I would envision that type of product will look very similar to what is seen in Chapel Green and the adjoining neighborhoods. It's a modest house, but very nicely done with a lot of variety and no kind of, you don't want to get too cookie cutter on things. You want that kind of eclectic feel to the neighborhood as well. So, yeah, so this is my attempt is trying to think through how you get a multi-level building built into the berm. So it has lower garage, street level entries. Then the living floors it's either one floor up or it's a split foyer type of arrangement. But the front of the house facing the street is where the outside living space is, a deck, that sort of thing. It's because we want to take advantage of that acoustic shadow that's created by the building and the berm. So that gives you kind of a feel for what will happen in there. I think we could probably let KL weigh in on some of the transportation issues now if you wanted.
Yeah, Jim, Mr. Simpson, I can transition a little bit here. So as required or at least authorized by the ordinance, the village, through the village engineer Craig Matthews, who's also online here tonight, asked and contracted with Kale Engineering, a traffic engineering firm here in Dane County, who's done a lot of work in the village to explore the traffic impacts associated with development. So the final thing we'd like to do, if you'd bear with us, is to allow Mike and Matt from KL to present the summary of their traffic impact analysis.
Just double checking that everybody can hear me.
We can hear you, Mike. Again, if you could state your name and address for the record.
Bet. So my name is Mike Scarman. My home address is 20 Garfield Avenue in Evansville, Wisconsin. With me is Matt Regner. I guess, Matt, if you can do the same.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Perfect. My name is Matt Regner. I live at 555 Lexington Drive in Oregon, Wisconsin.
Matt, I guess, ultimately the traffic study, as I understand it, may not have been part of the packet. I don't know, Mark, if that is correct. I just want to make sure the resources that people may have seen.
Mike, that's correct, but the commission will get the traffic study as soon as tomorrow.
Understood. So I guess my intent maybe with the discussion that I'll step through here is just to give a high level sense of some of the background and context on the study we did. And then we can kind of go into more detail as if there are questions. We're happy to do that, but I'll keep it at kind of a high level, at least to begin with. So I just a little bit of introduction in kind of Matt, myself, our traffic engineers. We work for Gale Engineering, is a firm in Madison that specializes in transportation and traffic engineering, and specifically projects that will kind of follow the structure of what we did with this study, which is kind of in general to look at the impacts of development on the transportation network, kind of adjacent, to just kind of understand, the before and after impacts, to, I guess in general, to evaluate whether specific improvements are warranted to be made as a result of the development. We have a fair amount of experience working in the village of DeForest, and including on River Road. We did some study on the Innovation Drive area in 2016, and more recently at the intersection of River Road and County V in 2019 with the signalization project. So definitely very familiar with this area. And, in the context of this study, we completed a traffic impact analysis, which I will kind of abbreviate, you'll hear as TIA. Just a little bit of context, a TIA is kind of a national recognized format that I would say, most agencies will use a similar process to evaluate traffic impact. So there's, federal guidelines that we use as resources for doing this work, as well as kind of local processes and other resources. And as I mentioned, the purpose of a TIA is in general to kind of do a couple fundamental steps. The first being evaluating the existing roadway network, and just kind of looking at traffic flow and traffic patterns before the development. And then we layer on the proposed development, other growth factors, and quantify how much traffic will be created, what direction they'll be heading, and lastly, to analyze future conditions using kind of a combination of existing traffic patterns with the proposed impact of development, and recommend, as I mentioned, when improvements are needed. I'll, I think, point through a couple specific things in this traffic study. I don't know who maybe am I addressing is controlling the screen. Is that Matt or?
That's me, Mike.
Yep, perfect. I guess if you had the.
Sorry, Mike, to interrupt. This is Jim again. Yeah. Could I ask you to maybe speak more clearly into your microphone or something? There's been one concern, probably others in the room, that is having trouble hearing.
I will do my best.
Thank you.
I think I am on the better mic, but let me see if I can make an adjustment.
Mike, it sounds like you're under about 3 inches of water. There's just kind of a garbling to your voice. I don't know if it's a technical problem that you can resolve or not.
How about this? I've had a problem switching back and forth between microphones. Does this sound more clear?
That is much better.
I'm sorry about that. It's happened twice today. I should have predicted that was going to happen. Help me if the first part was unclear. I can step through that again quickly. Let me know if that would be necessary.
No, that's not necessary, Mike.
I apologize for that. I will kind of continue, Matt. If maybe you had the Google Maps just to give a little bit of a map representation of the area that we did look at. So just to give some orientation, the parcel, the Yahar Grove development is the parcel where the cursor is. Our traffic study focused on the section of River Road, essentially from the Yahar River Bridge to the Norway Grove Lutheran Church, and specifically addressed some of the intersection configuration at Woods Glen, Daly Road, and kind of factored in the new intersection connection. So the component of our study really focused on that piece of River Road. We did have some background growth data collection that took place north and south of there, just to give us some more technical data, but the bulk of our analysis and our report focused on that segment of road that we're looking at. And I guess just in general, our study background kind of found that ultimately traffic is at levels that are at a moderate with the amount of development that is out there now, and traffic patterns are there are no existing congestion issues or troubling crash patterns type of things we looked at. As far as the roadway geometry itself, it's ultimately, as you guys know, it's kind of a growing area, so there's a rural cross section, somewhat unimproved in terms of as this area urbanizes. We expect the character of the roadway to change with that. But ultimately, in a nutshell, our evaluation of things as it stands now is we didn't find anything troubling, kind of some pre-existing conditions that needed addressing, with or without the development. Didn't really find anything of that nature. So I think the other aspect to touch on, Matt, if you want to maybe step toward the back of the report, we did look from the standpoint of forecasting beyond this one development, just to paint a broader picture, because there is a lot of undeveloped lands in the River Road corridor. It's very, let's say, closed network. There aren't a lot of other roads that are available. So one component of the study that is kind of separate and holistic is our traffic forecast that we use to project growth of these undeveloped areas as a background component of this TIA. So these are individual parcels of undeveloped lands. We work closely with Mark and Craig to understand the anticipated land uses or types of land uses and directionally where people would be oriented to. You'll see, and this map shows different land use codes and directions and major routes that will funnel traffic. And I guess if you pan up the screen a little bit, Matt, ultimately on the top left, there's a component of forecasted trips in the River Road corridor that we use as a background comparison to kind of layer on the existing, the current development, and then background. So we're projecting weekday trips in the magnitude of about 645 to 840, with significant growth over time. And I just wanted to point out the significance of that is these are unrelated to the development being considered for approval, but fundamentally with the amount of development and kind of conversion of lands around River Road, this was an important thing that we didn't want to overlook. So and a lot of this data should be applicable to other sites as River Road continues to develop. So just kind of looking at this as a supplemental resource that we use for this study, and I think could be a reference for others as well. So Matt, if maybe you want to go through the report briskly, and I'll just hit on some highlights. Kind of starting with these first chapters, I mentioned that we did evaluate the existing conditions, itemize and categorize the existing roadways. Kind of as mentioned, there weren't any concerning features or traffic patterns that we indicated. So I think it was really a function of just due diligence to make sure there were no pre-existing conditions. Our next kind of highlight here is the process of forecasting the traffic generated by the hard road development. Zoom in a little bit here. As kind of mentioned, there's a couple components: the single family housing and the multifamily housing. And just a little background for anybody that may not be familiar, but our resource here is the ITE, or Institute of Transportation Engineers, Trip Generation Manual. This is a guide that is based on nationally recognized studies of all sorts of different land uses all over the United States. We use this to compare different metrics, say number of houses or number of units and square footage and all the different kind of aspects of development to generate the anticipated travel pattern. So what we found here is, and in the big picture sense, that the development would be anticipated to generate about 2,350 vehicle trips every day. And I guess think about a trip as if you were to go to work in the morning and then come home at night, that would be 2 trips. So the total of all vehicle in and out is of the magnitude shown of 2,350 a day. And then in the peak hour when traffic is most concentrated, that's broken down as well. You can see in aggregate there the ins or the outs in the morning peak, 40 in, and as expected more in the outbound direction, 120. And in the reverse of that is people usually return home from work and school in the PM peak. So kind of point this out as this really sets the standard for the impact of this development as it's measured against the existing traffic patterns on the roadway. Again, as we go down, there's I guess maybe that back one page, Matt.
Yep.
Want to highlight the trip distribution is a pretty important component of most studies, and this one in particular. As we found by researching and looking at the traffic counts that we took in the area, and just like destinations and other major routes, we estimate the split that is generated by this development is not exactly 50-50, a little more weighted to the north, but it is sending, in our opinion, roughly equal amount to the north and south. As Jim pointed out earlier, there are two intersections, and I think that really does fit well with the anticipated traffic pattern. So it splits that traffic, in two directions across these two intersections pretty equally. So just to point that out, that's a kind of a baseline metric that we use throughout the rest of the study. So as we continue on, we take those traffic numbers and we then analyze to estimate and put metrics to the level of vehicle congestion, or in this case, I think more or less the lack thereof. It was pretty free-flowing movements. Clearly, with existing conditions, there's no stopping on River Road, and the only intersection in Woods Glen is a short cul-de-sac with a pretty small network of single-family homes that are serving. Our results pretty much point to very efficient when it comes to traffic flow. Level service A's, B's, and even C's are generally recognized in our industry as very acceptable and efficient. What you see here is we pretty much are either B's or A's in all directions. And as we kind of layer on that additional growth in the future, Matt can zoom in a little bit here. Our results, as traffic grows, congestion will grow. I do want to point out the level of service E is, maybe would interpret as a concerning level of traffic delay, but in all honesty, this is fairly typical of stop controlled residential street connections to or collector or larger loads. So this is, really indicative of, a car having to wait a handful of seconds just to wait for a gap. So this was not something we felt was really an indicator of anything problematic, but is to kind of indicate that as traffic grows, you will notice gaps are a little bit harder to find, but not to a degree that warrants significant expansion or improvements of the roads or the intersections. And I guess just to wrap up, the conclusions of our study were essentially to indicate that, as traffic grows, the congestion will grow, but not to a level that warrants extreme measures or major improvements. However, as the Yard Road development does, get built and start generating both vehicle and pedestrian movements, there are reasons to make improvements to allow safe access, mobility. Our suggestion was to not necessarily add travel lanes or turning lanes. The traffic flow can be accommodated efficiently without them, but more so to create some pedestrian refuge islands, just so it's safe to cross the street there. There's a lot of trail connectivity that we felt was important to make sure that was connected to the development to get across River Road safely, as well as some of the island features that are proposed at the intersections dual function is providing some traffic calming to slow vehicles on River Road to hopefully more in line with the posted speed of 35 and not faster. Ultimately, the additional improvement of adding a rapid flashing beacons. These are the push button activated flashing lights that warn a driver when a pedestrian's in across the road. Is recommended at the Woods Glen intersection to just kind of highlight and accent the amount of trail users and the bike path crossing. We anticipate that that would be a benefit just to make that as conspicuous and safe as possible with the opening of the development. So I guess with that, Matt, is there anything that I may have missed?
Mike, I think you're pretty thorough there.
So I'll turn it back over to Mark. And as I said, we're happy to answer more detailed questions if there are any.
The one thing I'll add in 10 seconds is the commission has in front of it 2 maps that show the recent and proposed improvements to the full 2.5 mile stretch of River Road between Windsor Road and Highway V as to use as a resource as we go forward here tonight.
Thank you all for the presentation, and we'll move on to the public hearing part. I have 3 applicants wishing to speak. One is a Rex Yankee that submitted a letter that I will read, and then after that I have a Chris Evans and a Gary Duplinger, if I said that correct. Yep. So I'm asking if there's anybody else in the room that does wish to speak, if you could please maybe submit some paperwork to Brandy, and Michelle is in the back of the room that can help you fill it out. And also if you're online, please let us know too. But at this time, I will read Rex's letter. And he lives at 505 Riverside Drive, Sunnybrook. I will try to read it without putting my glasses on. Since I don't do Zoom, I like this placed on the public comment record for this new subdivision. Number 1, River Road facing portion must be upgraded with turn lanes in and out at developer's cost. Number 2, reduce speed so that we don't have flyers over the top of the Churchill at the entrance to Sunnybrook. Bike crossing / crosswalk should be completed to trail with flashing markers installed. Number 3, bike path from Woods Glen to Yahara River Bridge should be added to assure continuation along River Road, since the road doesn't even have a portion that's safe to ride on. Number 4, although residential growth doesn't pay its way by raising taxes and putting pressure on growth, commercial growth should be a greater priority. Everyone needs a place to live though. Number 5, the reduction in street width or access curbing allows safe passage for everyone. Providence by Costco and Sun Prairie is a real mistake. Thanks for listening, Rex Yankee. And Chris, could I ask you to please come up and give your presentation or concerns? And also state your name for the record. And like I do, I have to pretty much have the mic an inch from my face, but Chris.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Evans, and I live at 4799 Daly Road. The property adjacent to this project, I'm not against the project, but I am a little concerned about the density. It's going to be a pretty happy bunch there, I think. But I do have a couple things I just want to put in the record. Talking to the the developer of this. About a year ago, we talked about a fence between the, let's see, the multifamily area. Mainly for that is my property's still in the town of Vienna, and I have some folks that deer hunt on that. We don't gun hunt on it, which we're allowed to do. We mostly just bow hunt. The thing I'm concerned about is somebody shoots an arrow and it goes by the deer and misses it, and the deer takes off running. Is it going to end up in these folks' swimming pool or something, tearing through there? If a fence could be still put in, like the developer told me he would agree to, again, that was a year ago, nothing was in writing. But if he still would go along with that for a few reasons, I wouldn't put any criteria on what it is. I'd leave it up to the standards that the village has. I'm sure you have standards for fences and that. So that's one item. Another item is the village asked me about 10 years ago for a water tower site on the west side of the interstate. I'm just looking at the two longer streets here, Street C and Street A, all the way to the west. If there could be in your lot configurations, if you'd leave a easement for a water line across the interstate to maybe eventually go to a new tower site if you need it. Just a thought. Also with that, I think a water tower needs some larger pipes coming from it. I don't know if the street that are put in here are set to accommodate a 12-inch line or larger. Let's see. The other thing with the multifamily, is that going to exceed 3 stories in height, or is that,
No.
That's as tall as they'll be? Okay.
That's as tall as the zoning allows.
Okay, that's similar to the hotels and that there, because your fire equipment will only take care of fires that tall, or to put them out.
Yeah, I can't comment on that, Chris, but the maximum and the proposal is 3 stories.
Okay. Okay. On the multifamily, I guess I'm kind of curious what the setback would be on that from the property line.
The minimum setback or what they're actually proposing?
Well, the minimum is fine.
The rear yard and the RM4. I'll get you that question when we get to the comments section, Chris.
Okay.
To that answer.
Other than that, the pictures look good. If they build what the pictures are there, it would probably be a nice asset to the village. It's just, again, there's other people that built there a few years ago, didn't expect this. So I think the landscaping needs to really be top of its game, make everything look good. My last comment, thank you for keeping Daly Road intact. That gives me a better comfort level. So, but that's all I had. Thank you for your time. You have any questions of me, or?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Is there any questions of the commissioners?
Okay.
I do have one, Chris.
Okay.
When you talk about wanting a fence, would you want it along the whole property line to the, let's say, interstate, or I'm seeing maybe more to the B road, or?
Mostly, is this on yet? Huh, yeah, I guess it is. Mostly behind the multifamily, like from my mailbox to the interstate.
Okay.
Where my driveway starts.
Yeah, we discussed that. I remember talking to Chris about that. we never discussed exactly what type of a fence we wanted or anything like that. But he had shown concern about having a fence between those properties from day one. And I had agreed to that.
Okay.
But
So thank you, guys, and we'll continue to work through that with the site plan stuff.
excuse me, you probably don't want a galvanized barbed wire fence like a truck storage area would have, but that's why I left it open to what you would pick that would be appropriate, so.
Yeah, I would like something attractive for both you and us, because we're going to have to look at it. I mean, the way I see where we put it, you probably won't have to look at it that much, but we will. So we would like something attractive there.
Okay. Well, I think we'll get along fine. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
So up next is Gary Duplinger, and I apologize if I misspoke. Oh, push the button.
You gotta turn it on. That's all right.
Yeah.
So Chris is, all right, here we go. We good? This thing on? Evening DJ session, here we go. Gary Rupplinger, 820 Woods Glen Court, DeForest. First off, I would like to give credit to the builder and the developer. This plan has gone a long way. They've changed some things, moved some things along from day one when we were out there under a tent in the hot weather like that gentleman just talked about. One thing that was really big in our conversation was the size, the story level of the multifamily building that's there. It doesn't fit in with the area. The area, you know, Chapel Green, Woods Glen, some of those houses in Conservancy, even to the north, our neighbors on the other side of South Street. You know, it's. I'm not sure it's the right fit for the area, and that was our concern. That was brought up to the builder, and the builder kind of met us with some pretty big resistance on that. But that's a concern that we have, and I'm not here to lecture you to death. I know your time is important, so we just have a few concerns that us folks have that we've talked about. And that's one of them is the height of the building. What's that looking like? They've shifted it around some, but still it's a good sized building. I'd like to think it looks a lot like the parking garage that's going up on top of the hill to the south, or that size. So it's a good size. The other thing is I have to compliment the builder and the developers. They've endorsed our trails, which is awesome. I'm glad to see it. They've incorporated it into our community, which I'm happy to see. The drawback is that filters right in through Woods Glen. And I'm not opposed to the residents living there using the trail system. I hope that they do. It's amazing. I hope they enjoy it like my family. But when you take a 3-story complex and all those houses and filter it through Woods Glen, I mean, it's a lot of traffic, a lot of bikes, a lot of people. Not that we don't welcome people on the trail, but I would like it if somehow that was filled in a different way, so to speak. And maybe people funneled through different locations. And I don't have all the answers. You guys are better at this than I do. But it's a concern that we have. You know, and the other thing is the traffic. You know, it's a main outlet there going through to Woods Glen, and it's going to be a change. There's no doubt, and I'm glad that they're putting in stop walk or crosswalks and push button things for people to cross and go to the park and all that kind of thing. But I know the traffic thing is a little bit above me, but I'd be curious to see how much is going to filter there and how long we're going to be stopped. And maybe it was there and I missed it, but that's just a concern, you know, that I have. And I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I appreciate you letting me come up and speak and considering my concerns, and happy to help out in any way possible with this plan. So thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Does any commissioner have a question of Gary? Thank you very much. So seeing no other forms turned in, and I don't see any hands raised up on Zoom or anything, or whatever program it is in.
I'm sorry, I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can I ask who's talking?
Okay, my name is Terry Pracknow.
Can I get your address for the record? Or?
Yep, It's 946 Silver Ripple Way.
Thank you. Terry, was
Yep.
it?
Yes, Terry, T-A-R-I.
Yeah. Terry,
I didn't know to fill anything out or not, so I'm sorry.
Oh, Terry, could I ask you when you're done speaking tonight or tomorrow if you could get your information to Brandy Cooper, so for the record?
Sure, perfect, yep.
Thank you.
I'm just concerned, I live in Chapel Green, and we're right at the bottom of the hill there at River Road, and to try to get onto South Street sometimes, or even turn left or right, or more, I guess, left onto River Road, I'm concerned about traffic there. I mean, you're talking, what, 2,350 trips a day, 2,050 trips a day, and half of that's coming our way. Right now, the cars come flying down that hill on River Road, and it's right now a concern to me. You know, trying to get across River Road onto South Street, or even turning onto River Road. So I'm just concerned with all that extra traffic coming through there, that something needs to be done here at South Street and River Road. Because especially in the winter too, I mean, that hill, coming down that hill, and I mean, the speed limit's 35. I know cars are going 40, 45 through there. And it's kind of a blind spot. So that's just my concern there.
No, thank you very much, Terry.
Yep.
Is there any questions or comments for Terry from the commissioners? Seeing none, I again thank you, Terry.
Yep.
And with that, I will be closing the public hearing at 7:40. Oh, there's another one. Sorry, I did not quite close the meeting at 7:40.
I wasn't sure. I just wanted to hear some input before I gave my 2 cents worth. But excuse me, I'm Roger Wanek, and I live at 516 Hanks Hollow Trail.
Gotta push the button, and if you could repeat that.
Well, I live on 516 Hanks Hollow Trail in DeForest here. My name is Roger Wanek. I'm right next to the kiddie park. I just know that over the years when they either did construction or whatever on the roads, that a lot of the side traffic comes through our neighborhood. And I've asked or requested on numerous times that they had a speed limit sign of 25 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, somewhere on Hanks Hollow Trail by that kiddie park. We live right beside the park, and I see a lot of people practicing for the Lamaze through there, and especially with this additional traffic. There hasn't been any comments about the traffic that's going to go down South Street into like Pick and Save and other areas that we want to have their business, obviously. And I'm concerned about that. I don't know if you guys had any or thought about any ideas about speed bumps or things like that. I know that the traffic department doesn't appreciate that, but speed signs only do so much, but speed bumps, they work. And I know that because I was in Milwaukee. My daughter just recently moved down there, and she's going to University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee there. And I just noticed in her vicinity they had speed bumps, and I just seen that the traffic they have in Milwaukee, you know, and we're just a fraction of that. But like the previous ladies mentioned, 2,500 cars, that's just to and fro, back and forth to work. Doesn't mention all the trips on weekends and stuff like that. And it doesn't involve the regular traffic that has to have access to this road. And so that hasn't, I don't think they took that in effect. He might have, but just from what I listened to, it was more or less taken on the estimated population and vehicles, not the people that are in DeForest at the present time that use those avenues to access, let's say, River Road onto Highway 19 and over onto River Road onto Highway V. So that was one of my concerns. Otherwise, I was wondering about the retention ponds. How is the water flow there and how is it treated? Could anyone explain that to me? I know they have the ponds for wastewater, but with all the single-family farms that, we know there's going to be a lot of additional fertilizers and stuff like that. And I really appreciate Hare River, and I'm concerned about, excessive rains, overflow, and what kind of things are going to do in preparation for things like that we might have.
So I'll just say the village engineer is sitting patiently at home, and he's, I think, taking notes, and I'll ask him to comment on that when we get to the discussion portion of the meeting.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thank you for your time. Like I said, I was just trying to get some input here, and I just wanted to have a couple of comments there that I wanted you to take attention to, because, we're talking particular about the project, but not, what the existing DeForest is dealing with right now and how that's going to affect us, specifically the traffic.
Yep.
I know. But anyways, it sounds like a good plan. Developers, I like the idea that they're making high quality places and their willingness to stay with the project for many years. It's not, they have it for a few years and roll it over after 10 years, like we see in Madison a lot with developments there. So anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Roger. Any questions from commissioners? Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you for speaking. I think Michelle is going to be looking for you. So I will now hesitate for a second and close the public hearing at 7:45. So thank you all for holding in during that. And we will move on to action recommendation, and this is item 6.2, discussion and recommendation on a position for rezoning of the two parcels listed on the agenda that total 47.2 acres west of River Road and south of Norway Grove Memorial Church, from A1 agricultural to RN2A residential neighborhood, single family residential, RM3 residential mixed two-family housing, RM4 residential mixed multifamily housing, and C1 Conservancy zoning district to facilitate a mixed residential subdivision named Yahara Grove, including conceptual review of proposed multifamily residential component. And I think I will ask Mark if you have any comments to start the discussion. I know we did mention just recently about maybe Matthews talking about the stormwater, but.
Yes, as I heard the public comments, aside from what Chris Evans was talking about, probably predictably, most of them were about traffic and the condition of River Road, both traffic volume on it and the condition of it to handle that. And there was a couple of questions on utility routing, potentially to a water tower west of the interstate, and on the village's stormwater management standards. And so I know, and I'm very happy that we have experts here on the Zoom that don't require me to answer those questions. So I'm hoping that the guys there are prepared to kind of tackle some of those questions, and Brandy can bring up on screen whatever you may need to help with that.
So I guess, Craig, can you answer, we cannot hear you if you're talking, but could you answer us about, say, the stormwater, if there has been anything submitted yet, or I guess just in general, maybe how much our ordinance sort of protects the stormwater? Still cannot hear you though, Craig. Yeah.
Craig, could you, I'm assuming you can hear us, maybe you could just call in Okay, and then maybe we'll just move on to to address another question until you can get connected.
And another question I had written down is the rear setback, that the minimum, maybe what is shown.
The minimum is 30 feet, 30.
Minimum setback from what, Mark? This is Brian.
Well, it would be the south property line between the nearest multiple family building and the south property line.
Okay, thank you.
As we're trying to get Craig on the phone, I wonder if there's any comments or reactions that Mike and Matt have at KL to some of the concerns regarding traffic, if they'd like to comment on that.
I think we do have some kind of specific numbers that, you know, if that helps provide some context, I might point to Matt. He did much more of the hands-on and has access to some of those numbers. I don't know, Matt, is that something you could kind of pull up and just give some context to some of the delay numbers?
Sure, I can share my screen again if that would be helpful.
I think
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm getting a pop-up that someone needs to stop sharing first.
Oh, that would be me. Oops.
All right.
There you go.
Here I go. You know, I think I heard a comment from the gentleman who lives on Woods Glen regarding what his delay might be with this development going in. I have the analysis pulled up for that future year, which, as Mike articulated earlier, we're looking at basically significant build out of that whole River Road corridor with projections on what might be adding to the traffic there. So this is in addition to what the Little Creek development specifically shows. But what we're modeling is that for Woods Glen residents during the PM peak hour, they're looking at about a level of service C with about one car of Q. A level of service of C would correspond to about a 26 to 35 second delay for that.
Matt, if you were, I'm not seeing your screen. If you intended to show that.
Well, there it is. Sorry about that, but I guess I was hovering over my future year analysis table here, and we're looking at the level service C for that westbound, which corresponds to Woods Glen Court. So, Mike, did you have anything to add?
I guess to put that in some context, a level of service C would be, you know, kind of representative. On average, you may wait 15 to 20 seconds for a gap to enter traffic. Which is I guess, from the kind of standards we follow, well below what we would consider problematic. As traffic grows, that wait time will increase, but it's really more of, if you're waiting for a long time and cars begin to stack up, that's generally our metric to say something probably needs to be improved. Just in the nature of Woods Glen, there's not a lot of traffic demand created because it's a dead-end street. So, you may have to wait a bit, but it's not like the data that we've kind of modeled would indicate that you're going to wait for an extreme amount of time where, maybe drivers would start making hasty and unsafe decisions. So we're comfortable saying, delay will increase, and I think people will notice that, but ultimately, with traffic calming some of the islands, we hope there's speed, compliance, and that should lend itself to, gaps being provided in River Road, even in the future. That should be, to an acceptable level, but quite frankly, as traffic grows, it will be a noticeable uptick. It does not necessarily to us trigger levels that warrant dramatic improvements or different type of traffic control like signalization or anything like that.
And then just by
Mike and
nature.
Matt, this is Jim. Could I ask for clarification as far as what is the PM peak hour and what year this future year is that you're looking at?
Generally, we're looking at the year 2036. The future year for this TA is more tied to our forecast projections of what is the significant build out that Mike went over before. But so it's tied to that. The PM peak specifically that we identified with existing traffic would be 4:45 to 5:45 p.m. And then the morning peak is 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. Of course, there's potential that that shifts over the years, but we're just dealing with the information we have. Does that help, Jim?
Yep, thank you very much. Do you have anything else to add, or I think we might have Craig on?
I think I'm here.
We're hearing you now.
All right, sorry about that. Jim, I'll give you my name and address as you've been asking from everyone. So Craig Matthews with Veerbecker from 400 Viking Drive in Reedsburg. And I did take some notes here, go over those questions that were asked. So in terms of stormwater, they do have a pretty well put together stormwater plan at this point in time. Of course, it's preliminary and still needs to be refined a little bit, but it's, looks like it's well on track to meet DNR and village ordinances. And they'll be addressing things such as rate control that will reduce flooding. They're required to do total suspended solids reduction. So a wet detention basin will be provided to help reduce pollutants that are within the stormwater runoff. And then lastly, they're required to do infiltration. So all of those components are addressed within their stormwater management plan. So other questions, I guess, were related to water main by Chris Evans. We do have a review comment that should show up in the packet there regarding the size of the water main. So we are asking for a larger diameter water main around the perimeter streets. 10 or 12 inch size main is what we'll be looking there. That will be reviewed and finalized as we complete our review as the project moves forward. And then Chris also made the comment regarding a potential easement for the water main heading across the interstate potentially in the future. Appreciate that comment, Chris. It's a good comment and one that we will take a look at and potentially incorporate into the request here as far as a review with the preliminary plat to make sure that that's provided. I think I've addressed those questions. If anybody or if any that I've missed, Mark or Jim, that you think need to be touched on?
I do not see any on my list. Mark, do you have anything else?
I think there's a general concern that I've heard tonight a little bit and over time about the kind of up and down nature of River Road and the visibility of traffic, you know, when you're pulling out of intersections and how much reaction time you have. Craig, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, particularly at Brook Street and River Road, you know, there's some concern with the site visibility there, and it is not ideal. We actually, KL has also provided some input on that. So that hill is a little difficult to get the ideal site distances from. As Mark noted, and as is in the packet, you know, there is clearly plans to upgrade and improve River Road. You know, and so that's something that would be looked at to address. We would be addressing the site distance issues at that intersection with those improvements to River Road in the future there. And I think that's programmed for 2025 within that area.
What Brandy has up on screen now, I'm sorry, Craig. What Brandy has up on screen now is a map that the Veerbecker team put together to show what's underway. There's, dirt being moved on the south end of River Road right now, and what's planned to occur. By next year, about 2/3 of River Road will have been upgraded between North Street, Highway V, and Windsor Road. That leaves the remaining segment that's a little less than a mile that's shown in green on the map that would be programmed for future improvement. It covers that segment that Craig just talked about outside of Brook Street, and also the segment immediately adjacent to the subdivision we're discussing tonight. That's currently programmed to be improved in, 4 years, 2025. In the meantime, as a lot of mics here tonight, a lot of mics and Jims. One of the mic from KL described there are recommendations to improve the proposed intersections of this development with River Road in the meantime to facilitate safe crossings, particularly for pedestrians. So that would happen before 2025. In fact, it would happen in conjunction with the first phase of development of Yahara Grove, this development.
Thank you, Mark and Craig. I'm looking at commissioners as far as there any further discussion, questions? Tom?
First, the traffic study, since we don't really have it in front of us, I have a couple questions. Is the increase, the daily increase, is that a snapshot from the development? Is that a snapshot from phase 1 of the development, phase 2, all 3 phases? Does it take into account the new pin seekers? Does it take into account all the new developments in Conservancy with CF Investments and the apartments? What do those numbers reflect?
I guess I'd ask Mike or Matt if you could respond to that question.
Matt is scrolling his way there.
It's a big study. You'll enjoy it.
A lot of good stuff.
Bathroom reading.
Matt, I don't know if you want to address this one. Otherwise, I can jump in.
I just got unmuted. Everyone can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the question was specific again here?
Which part?
What are these shapes?
Yeah, what is your traffic study a reflection of? Is it a reflection of all 3 phases of the new development, proposed development? Is it a reflection of phase 1? Does it include all of the new construction and development in Conservancy? Does it include pin seekers?
Correct. To jump in there, what we have on the screen here is the full development, and as you can see, I believe site 11 is pin seekers, so it's included, as well as an extensive trip generation exercise that was done for that development. And then less extensive but still specific trip generation was done for all of these parcels, which if you were to zoom in the top right, you can see like multicolored dots that kind of detail the type of development we see happening on these, a range of mixed use, single family, commercial throughout these development sources, which add to that future year 2036, if you will, just roughly 15 years in the future, which might be aggressive to expect all this development to occur, but that's what we went with here. So this, what this forecast allowed us to do was establish through the trip gen exercise with IT how much traffic might be out here on River Road as well as associated roads, such as South Street, Innovation Drive, Windsor Road, in that future year. And then once we did that, we had future year volumes along River Road. We then took that for the sake of our traffic study at the Little Creek development, and we considered that development, all 3 phases occurring basically year 1, just to somewhat develop a worst case for that point and not do 3 different tiers of analysis. What we did there then was, by driving all the development of Little Creek into year 1 and putting it into the model, we were able to establish the level of services based on the worst case of the development with that future year. And as it turned out, those volumes were not particularly concerning to us as traffic engineers. Level of service A is on River Road, which you'd expect with no stop control and the 2-lane road not reaching congestion, as well as side road delays and queuing that are kind of nationally acceptable.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do see here you actually show increases on Innovation Drive, and I think just off the screen is South Street that Roger even commented on too. So it's great that you looked at all those other roads. Sorry to interrupt again, Tom. It's your floor.
No problem. My next couple questions are for the developer. I have a question on the single-family lots. Unless I misunderstood, are you planning on selling those to other developers, or are you going to build those yourself? Mike's muted.
No, we are planning on selling the single family. We've been in contact with several different single family developers. No one's, we need to get through the preliminary plat stages before they get too excited about what they're potentially purchasing. So we are not single family developers, but we have been working with a couple different groups.
Sorry, go ahead. I asked Mike for a clarifying question. So Mike, would your organization, Little Creek, be developing the utilities and the roads and recording the lots and then selling the lots to different single-family builders?
We're looking at 2 different options for that, doing it exactly like that, or if there was a single-family developer that wanted to buy all of the single-family lots. And like I said, it's too preliminary at this point to say which way we're going with that. We want to move quickly on the single family lots because the market's so hot right now.
Then my last question is, you must have goals for the different phases. Do you have a timeline that you're shooting for? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? Ideally, when would you like to have all 3 done? And
no, we don't have a timeline. We were hoping to get this approved a year ago. So, now we're just getting to the preliminary plat stages. We would like to break ground in spring of 2022, but I can't see that right now until we get through all these approvals. And once we start, we would, the apartments, when we do start the apartments, we're going to do 1 building a year. As they stabilize, do the next one. In the single family, it's just on what the demand is on how quickly they build those out. The twin-door or condos, we're doing those ourselves also, and the reason we're doing those is because that condo association is going to be able to use the amenities that we have on the apartments. The amenities that we're putting in this apartment complex, with 175 units, you can't justify what we're adding to that complex with the amenities. But if we bring the condos in that, then we can have the nice swimming pool and the fitness centers and all the other amenities that we know keep these all on high-end apartments and or condos.
So this is Ben Fulkowski. I just wanted to clarify some items regarding the single family. So when my father is mentioning lots, he means the entire land that encompasses the 73 single-family lots. The park is involved with the multifamily and the phase one that we will be working with the city through, or the village through. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Still.
That's it. Thank you.
You know, I do think we've got this phasing plan today. I'm just reacting to it. You know, I hear the concept of building an apartment building one year and then another apartment building the next year and then another one the next year. That implies by this map that we will have phases 1, 2, and 3 of the single family and 2 family on that same schedule. So we might need, the developer might need to work on that a little bit if that's not the case.
Clarify that, Mark. Mark?
Yes.
Was that you that just made those comments?
That was me, yes.
Could you clarify that for me?
The map here implies that you will be developing 75 multiple family units at the same time as the first 21 units, and then the next 75 units at the same time as the remaining 50-some single family, and then the final 75 units at the same time the condo project is built. So if that's the intent, that's great. But that would suggest that you've got a 3-year build out of the entire development anticipated.
Yeah, I don't think we can get it done that quickly.
Right.
Other commissioners?
Ben Fulkowski, just one more comment to add on to that. So based off of some due diligence and research on single family lot sales in the community averages 2 to 3 lot sales in a bad month over the at least 24 to 36 months. So with that, you can consider how long it would take to complete the 73 single-family lot development phases. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian or Mike, I don't see on screen now, but I ask you if you have any comments, if you please mention them.
Go ahead, Mike. I'll go after you. Mike there?
I'm here, just wrapped up in a blanket, so I didn't want everybody looking at me. My really only questions is, first of all, I'd like to say that the comments made in regard to South Street, I think the traffic on South Street is probably one of the few, other than Main Street, that is pretty well kept at the speed limit that we have in the village. I think River Road, there's no doubt that at South Street and River Road. So one comment that was made, I don't think there's any question that's a little bit of an issue. And I guess I didn't do a good enough job of looking at the plans today or the packet today to see what the actual proposal was for River Road. But I think potentially some turn lanes or something in there. And maybe we do have to reduce the speed when we come down that hill towards South Street as a possibility. They have a talk with the engineers and et cetera about that. But overall, I like the concept. I like, I think it would be a good addition to the Village of DeForest, and I'm hoping we can get everything worked out and get going.
Thank you, Mike. Brian, did you have comments?
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. Again, my compliments to the developer. I really like the plan. I like the way that you took comments into consideration from your first meeting with affected property owners nearby. I really like the layout. I have a couple of concerns. Some of them were already addressed by Craig and KL. I'm extremely concerned about River Road as we continue to build out along River Road. I know that KL, considered pin setters and everything else that's coming in there, and that's great. That level E of service kind of scares me in the design year. So as Craig and the village moves forward with this next section, especially by the church and South Street and I can't remember the other one street. That's a concern. I come off of South Street all the time, and it's tricky, even making a right turn, let alone a left turn going up River Road. My other concerns, Mark, you brought them up very early in the presentation. Density. It always bugs me when developers come in and they're stacking houses in like cordwood. I've mentioned that a couple of times over in Peterson Crossing and developers that proposed over there. I think the single family is just jammed in there a little bit too much. But that's just my opinion. That again, that's not a decision that the Planning and Zoning Commission will make. That's a decision that's ultimately going to be the village board. But I think we're a little bit too dense in there for single family. I'm not sold on the noise analysis for the condos. In my line of work, I respond to noise complaints on the interstate, and I usually get about 24 complaints a year, and these are from people that are almost 1,000 feet away from the driving lane. These condos are going to be right on top of the driving lane by what I'm looking at, maybe 70 feet, 80 feet at best. Mark, I don't know what our ordinance is for setbacks and development along the interstate. Generally anything that's 130 feet or less constitutes a noise barrier. I realize that you guys are putting up a 9-foot wall and you're planning on putting vegetation. You're planning on doing that very early in the development so that when you get to phase 3, a lot of that vegetation will be grown up, and I appreciate that. However, vegetation and a berm, you get a perceived reduction, not necessarily a reduction in the noise. I'd like to see us take a little bit better look at that, a little bit more in depth, and potentially consider noise absorption material, i.e. a wall along there for those condos in future development. Otherwise, I like the plan. I think it's a great layout, and looking forward to moving forward with this. Thank you.
Brian, I could just offer a comment. We are in the preliminary plat stage, and they have submitted a preliminary noise study. You'll get that tomorrow. It was truncated from the packet along with some other things. If they move to the final plat stage, they will need to submit a much more detailed noise abatement study, and then we'll learn if and to what extent their suggested noise mitigation measures will do the trick, or if a full wall or a partial wall might be required instead or in addition.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, guys. I have 3 comments I'd like to make myself. I think they're probably more comments than anything. But I'm looking at the street B and how at the north end it does say a little bit of a kick to go more due north than parallel to the interstate. I guess I would make a request that the developer contact the 2 churches that are part of that cemetery and
Jim, I'm sorry, I got to do a point of order. I think we're getting out of rezoning here.
Yep, you're right. Thank you. So we are discussing completely the rezoning, and I started bringing up plat comments, and let me look at my other 2 comments and see what they're applicable to. Those are more plat comments too. So thank you very much. Point of order, I am done, and I believe we might be done discussing the rezoning, but we do need to have a motion or continue discussion on the rezoning. Mark, I'm assuming you would request or I would make a motion to postpone. Try to see what this is. I'd like to make a motion to postpone the decision on rezoning to a future meeting. I guess I'll leave it at that, open end, in case it's not the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jean. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to postpone the rezoning to the next meeting. And the next item is item 6.3.
I think the postponement was to some future meeting. Is that right, Jim?
Some future meeting, yes. Sorry, I don't know what I said there. Item 6.3 is discussion and recommendation on a preliminary plat and potential unimproved road discontinuance for the 2 parcels listed on the agenda, totaling 49.3 acres west of River Road and south of Memorial Grove Memorial Church, to facilitate a mixed-use residential subdivision named Yahara Grove. I know, Jean?
And at this point of the project, I'm going to recuse myself from this item.
Yep, thank you very much, Jean. Jean is stepping down for this item. We will continue the discussion, and I open the floor for any discussion or potential action. Anybody else? Brian and Mike, I see you're on mute, so I'm assuming you're good.
Well, if we're going to postpone the decision-making process on the plat, do we have to should that be postponed as well until we have a final plan?
I would suggest that, but I do have 3 comments that I'd like to make before or after the motion. So I guess I will make my 3 comments now. And I am, again, talking about the Street B, how it kicks a little bit to the north. And I would ask that the developer talk to the property owner to the north, which I know is a cemetery that's owned by 2 churches in town. And why I bring that up is this is in my past history that cemetery this is my history and understanding at that time is that the cemetery did not necessarily want to give up land for dedication. So I think that may be problematic to get that connection in the future, and I want to make sure we limit the amount of land we'd be requesting. So I would propose that it might be better to go parallel to the interstate to minimize the amount of land between the roadway and the interstate. But again, I just ask that the developer talk to those churches to see what they would prefer. Make sense? And another comment that I had was that the developer showed a trail on top of the berm, and I think that's a great amenity. But the way I believe shown right now, it's an amenity that is on private property. So if you, in fact, want that to be a public amenity, I would ask that you would provide an easement for it. And I do think that can be a great asset for the village. So another stepping stone for potentially going, say, below the percentages or the additional amenity, or what, Mark, what was your term, a shiny penny? Yeah. And the last comment I would have is, this is maybe a bit controversial, not to the huge extent, but all your roads and your development, I think, are shown at 66 feet. And I can think of a few streets that maybe, in my opinion, doesn't need to be that wide, but I would ask that think about that and talk with staff to see if there's any streets that might be appropriate to go less with, and if that is something that you want to pursue, I'd leave that up to you guys. Those are the 3 comments that I had. I guess to name a few I'm looking at, was it the street E, I believe, that goes straight north-south, and I see your, what I call an eyebrow that may not necessarily need to be 66 feet wide, but again, I'll leave that up to your interpretation of what you want to do for your development. Those are the comments I had on the plat. Is there any other comments or concerns? Seeing none, is there a motion? Again, we're looking for a motion. The postpone is probably the most.
Jim, I'll make a motion to postpone approval or postpone discussion on 6.3 to a future date.
Thank you, Scott. Is there a second? Seconded by Tom. Any further discussion?
Can you clarify that that was a motion to postpone to a future meeting?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to postpone, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Because Shannon is 7. Thank you. And Jean, I believe you're returning. Thank you. No, Shannon is 7. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all. Good seeing you again, Chris. So moving on to item number 7, which is all our, any other business that lawfully comes before the Village of DeForest Planning and Zoning. Chair's report. We have been rather busy. I'll try to run through a number of things real quick. We had a discussion on the second quarter building permits. I can't remember if that was brought here. That's maybe something we could share if people are interested. They talked about a second location for a fire and EMS station. So that's currently being proposed down south of Windsor Road on Northtown Road. Is the leading contender. It might be the only contender at this point. We are working on job description and different things for hiring a deputy finance director and an administrator. If some of you don't know, Steve Falgren's contract, or I don't know exactly what it is ending, and I think in less than a year, or about a year, in February 2022. So we need to move on to what we are going to do when Steve retires, or at least leaves that position. So Village Board is working on that. There was some discussions on board notifications as far as there was an incident where a number of village board members went to a different committee, so we actually had a quorum present at a meeting. So we need to be cognizant of that and say for the village board, we should be telling Luann. And I just bring it up here is that we also got to be cognizant of that as our own committee. If we all say go to the village board, we might, I think we have to notify that the planning and zoning quorum might be at a village board meeting. So if you do attend a village board meeting or other meeting, it'd probably be best to contact Brandy and let her know. Luann or Brandy. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Mark. You would think I would know better. For the village board meeting, it would be best to notify the village clerk, but if we're looking at other meetings that you might be in attendance at, you could certainly let me know or let, the staff that leads those meetings know ahead of time.
Yeah, I just read the article in the DeForest Times and I thought everything was referenced back to Luann.
I'm sorry.
I read the article in the DeForest Times about the quorum issue and everything was referenced back to letting Luann know.
Yeah, for the village board meeting, that is correct.
I thought it was.
In fact, they put a little form up online, so you can fill it out online if you want to. And sort of with that, I know we have a comp plan discussion coming up on September 9th. I know I'm attending, so we might get to a point of having a quorum there, but we'll. Very good.
I already posted the notes for comp plan.
There was an amendment to the developers agreement with Pin Seekers that extended it a couple months to give them time to submit an application. I'm showing a PDP amendment and a comp plan amendment for Savannah Brooks was discussed. The speed limit was reduced on Northtown Road for a section, so be cognizant of that. I think there's a flashing sign up there right now.
There is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a trail from Fox Hills into Windsor Community Park is being discussed and worked on to get an agreement with Windsor so we can construct that. There was the last comment I have is that there was some staff interactions where I don't know exactly what was going on, but the comment more or less is that we need to be cognizant of staff time. So I don't think it's been a problem with Brandy, but I look to you if there's any further guidance you want from us.
No, not at this time. I think everybody's pretty respectful. So.
And under, say, closed section, we've talked about Bear Tree Farms West, what you've seen tonight, and Savannah Brooks subdivision that you guys saw earlier with those redevelopments or whatever. And that's a long list of everything that we've talked about. So thank you. Staff report.
I have nothing.
Site plan, CSM. Nothing.
Site plan approvals. We don't have anything that's been approved by staff recently. We are working with the, I don't know if you remember that, like man cave incubator warehousing space on the corner of Dora Forum and Northtown Road. We are working with that developer right now to process through a site plan. You guys will see that via email here. Probably, I'm hoping tomorrow for you guys to review and comment on because we are able to approve it at staff level. So,
okay, thank you. Mark, you're looking at me like you might have something. No. Then I will move on. I will move on to 7.5, development process enforcement suggestions. Anybody?
I was actually going to bring up the same thing that Mrs. Clemens brought up earlier about that unsightly car wash.
Mm-hmm.
There are plans, or are there not plans? Have somebody talked to the owner there, or is that looks like something right out of the ghetto?
I'm limited on what I can share on that property.
Okay. As long as the village is aware and is actively doing something, that's fine.
I do know that it is currently in foreclosure, so that is what I can share at this point. I am monitoring it, and hopefully we'll see some resolution soon.
That'd be a great area for TIF funding.
Hey.
Actually, along those lines, do you know what's going on with the property on the corner of Valeria and Acre? There's a single-family home that I don't know if anybody's living in, but it seems to get the yard mowed. No? Okay, good.
It needs the yard mowed?
The yard is mowed, so I can't complain about that, but I haven't seen people there for quite some time, so.
Oh, no, I don't. Not aware of anything.
The weeds in the driveway were 2 or 3 foot high, but the yard was mowed.
Okay. I can pass that on to the weed commissioner.
They got it. They whacked it down. Okay, so sorry for the regression. Any other enforcement suggestions or code enhancements? Seeing none, our next meeting is September 28th. Is there a motion to adjourn? I hear one from Tom. Second? I guess I just seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you all. We are adjourned at 8:34.
And I just want to say, I hope you feel better, Mike.
Yeah, feel better, Mike.
Thanks. It's not terrible, but